1.
Good evening. I'm Bernard Green, Chair of the Brookline Select Board, and this is the meeting of the Select Board. In case people can't hear me, for December 5, 2023. Let's start off with announcements, updates, or statements from the Select Board. By the way, Miriam is going to be a little late, so she's not here yet, but she will be. Okay, any statements from the Select Board?
Well, do you have one?
No.
I can make one, if that's okay.
Sure.
And Devin's going to present a picture that goes with this one. And the unfortunate part of Miriam not being here is that I was going to have some fun with her, but that's Miriam, and she has in her hands, which, you know, under normal circumstances, it doesn't occur to us often to like, why don't you hand that giant pair of scissors to Miriam? But this was for a reason. This was the ribbon cutting for the new Driscoll School, which was just yesterday, and you can see the crowd. Lots and lots and lots of people showed up, including Miriam, of course, who was actually in charge of the ceremonies for the ceremonial ribbon cutting for to celebrate the opening of the new school. Mike was there. And as they say, a good time, Chavs was there, a good time was had by all. And Miriam got to wield giant scissors, which is the dream of every person who ever gets elected to some sort of, you know, office that might involve a ribbon cutting. It's a dream to sort of be handed a pair of giant scissors and be the one who cuts the ribbon. And she delivered on that beautifully. And but the most important part of the event was that everybody was just sort of in awe of the new Driscoll School. And we all got cookies and brownies. And I think the new school is off to a great start because it's a great school community, and they got the school that they've been waiting for and celebrated appropriately yesterday.
Great, thank you. Any other updates or comments from the Select Board? No? Okay. Next is public comment. Devin, please recite the rules.
Thank you for joining us for public comment. This is your opportunity to share issues in the town that are important to you. You will have 3 minutes to make your comment, and at that time, you must conclude your remarks. You will get a 30-second warning. You are welcome to share your remarks via email if you do not have enough time. And there is a 15-minute public comment period at the outset of this meeting. It is already full in advance with signups. So if you would like to make an additional public comment, you are welcome to wait until the end of the Select Board's business, where your name will be added to the list at that time. The first person signed up for public comment is Mary Dewart. You can head up to the presentation station, introduce yourself, and your 3 minutes will begin.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mary Dewart, and I'm a member of the Friends of Lars Anderson Park. And I'm so pleased to share that we are finalizing a Community Preservation Act application due December 14th. Lars Anderson Park is a public park listed on the state and national registers of historic places. We're applying for a professional study of the area of the park that has been used as a former DPW maintenance yard. The former yard is located between the Anderson Auto Museum and an Anderson employee's former Avon Street residence. Our study proposes transforming the bedraggled, worn-out yard into a welcoming outdoor destination for young and old. If awarded, the study would lead the way for an inclusive, healthy destination for all. Lars is to Brookline as Walden is to Concord, for those who love Lars Anderson Park. In 1948, our public park was willed to the people of Brookline by Isabel Anderson. Town meeting explicitly accepted Isabel's will under the terms of her request, quote, for public recreation, charitable purposes, and purposes of public education. The former yard is currently dominated by aging asphalt and large metal storage buildings. Our proposal requests a CPA-funded study for CPA goals, including climate mitigation, open space, outdoor recreation, and preservation. And we ask, as a member of the Friends of Lars Anderson, and I ask for a chance to offer a grassroots proposal as the CPA itself contemplates. The proposal looks to fund professional, creative landscape architects for site analysis, concept drawings, and public hearings at a cost of approximately $60,000. What has arisen during this process and CPA's first year is the question of who owns Lars Anderson Park and who is the custodian. Lars Anderson Park was given to the people of Brookline and accepted by town meeting. Select Board are our elected representatives, the people's representatives. We believe that the Select Board is empowered, if not obligated, to support the terms of the Anderson bequest and act as custodians of the park in connection with our application for CPA funds, and your support is respectfully requested. Thank you so much.
The next person signed up for public comment is Robert Daves. Approach the presentation station, introduce yourself, and your 3 minutes will begin.
Hi, my name is Robert Daves. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 4, and I live at 9 Upland Road. I sent a previous email to everybody here at the Select Board table with some photographs. For 25 years, I've lived in sight of 129 Walnut Street, which is a beautiful, or could be beautiful, brick attached dwelling that was built in 1840. And it has, since I've lived there, it has been abandoned. Nobody has lived there and is seriously deteriorating. We have attempted to bring this condition to alert of various staff members over the years. Last year, we did a series of photographs and we went back and forth, but here it is a year later, and we're not certain about what response has been made. So there's three issues that we think are of concern here. One is the deterioration of the building and its imminent collapse. And you'll see in photographs that the facade is starting to fail. And so that's maybe the building department. There's health department issues because there are rodents and animals living in the building. You will see a picture of raccoons climbing up and down the chimney. And then, of course, there's preservation commission issues because it's in a preservation area. And there's excerpts of regulations that I put at the bottom of the email I sent. But anyway, I'm not here to say that anybody's at fault or anybody's been negligent. I know nothing about the current owners, and so there may be hardship involved. But this is a serious case of neglect. The building is in danger soon to fall down. It's becoming probably financially, not interested to anybody who wants to rehab it. And it should be taken care of. And so I'm asking that, I'm coming here to the Select Board because there are multiple departments involved. There should be a coordinated response, and that needs to be communicated back to the neighborhood. So let us know how it's being taken care of. And there are other properties I've learned since since this has been flying around our neighborhood in other parts of town that may be suffering the same kind of fate. And anyway, that's my statement. Thank you.
Next person signed up for public comment is Omar Gafal. You can join us at the presentation station, introduce yourself, and your 3 minutes will begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Omar Gafour. I am a 24-year-old proud lifelong Brookline resident, and I will be speaking about the impending signage bill change. So again, just to introduce myself, I am a Lawrence School alum, Brookline High alum, and also attend the Boston University. I'm a first-generation Muslim here in the United States. And I've grown up here in the melting pot that is Brookline for my entire life. I've been blessed with the opportunity to build relationships with peers of mine ranging from all types of backgrounds. And I would say kind of the most crucial thing for me has been the foundation of these beautiful friendships, which originated with elements of a rather youthful racial ignorance and have now matured into strong, budding, lifelong bonds that have evolved to this day, all with the help of empathy, understanding, and cultural awareness from both sides. This brings me now to present day, where I'm a bit of a loss of words due to the seemingly abandonment of the communal unity that I once believed truly defined the town of Brookline. I would preface all of this by saying this is not a slight at any particular side, rather an indictment on the unnecessary injection of polarization and tension in our town. What is transpiring right now in Israel and Palestine is abhorrent, it's inhumane, and is affecting the lives of everyone around the world. And we do indeed owe it to our brothers and sisters to provide for any form of aid in whatever capacity we can. This does not, however, justify us tearing each other down here in our hometown of Brookline. There's absolutely zero tangible or intangible benefit to Brookline triggering a domestic proxy war of such between groups. And again, there are no winners that come from this. We live in a time where social media and propaganda are legitimate weapons of war, and to ignore this would be blatant ignorance. The freedom to spread awareness on the suffering of our people, whether through social media or signage, is one that we should not be stripped. However, we must not ignore the message it sends and spreads to those all in Brookline. Changing the rules at hand to allow the loudest groups to be given said privilege broadcast a clear message to all, and again, serves nothing more than pouring gasoline on a fire. I need not say, I cannot imagine how many of my fellow Brookline citizens would feel if they had to see countless pictures of the 3 young Palestinian boys who were attacked right next door to us in Vermont, in particular brother Hisham, who was left permanently paralyzed. Let's be honest with ourselves. We all have the means and resources to receive information on what is going on locally and nationally. Pretending that signage across the town is going to bring anything more than hate is ingenuous and, in the grander scheme of things, both antagonizing for a multitude of minority groups and hurtful to the overarching cause as a whole.
You have 30 seconds.
Love, sympathy, and a healthy respect for those around us are traits that should be longed for in these times of hardship, for those are what will allow us to prevail through these times of conflict. The Israeli and Palestinian communities do not pertain only to their respective region. It entails all of us as a whole, which is why it is imperative that we do our best in seeking prosperity and hope that our brothers and sisters around the world follow our lead. Thank you all for your time.
The next person signed up for public comment is Ala Aldamati. Faiza Khan, you can join us at the presentation station.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Faiza Khan, Precinct 13. I also sent this in an email, but I wanted to read it here as well. At the last select board meeting, we heard that the select board will be considering a new policy governing the use of signage on town property in Brookline. Under the current bylaw, section 5.8.3, one couldn't erect any signs on any property owned by the town except temporary election signs within certain restrictions. This current bylaw is fair and evenly handed. It's applied even-handedly and ensures that no Brookline resident is subject to any upsetting images or messages on town property, a town all of us live in and pay taxes to maintain and improve. My understanding, based on the mentioning of a bulletin board and 60-day notice in the last meeting, is that there could be a desire by the select board to carve out some subjective exception to this current signage posting bylaw. This exception could allow any Brookline resident who applies to have the ability to post views on any issues of personal, regional, religious, or global impact on a bulletin board for 60 days. I and many other Brookline residents urge you not to take this action. First and foremost, as I mentioned in a prior public comment, this town's residents are incredibly stressed, pained, and fractured regarding world events. Many of us have strong links and family from the regions that would likely be posted about. As we grieve and process, we should be able to choose for ourselves the time, place, and manner we and our children are exposed to views on various serious topics. Also, if the select board takes on the great responsibility of approving which messages are allowed to be posted on a bulletin board and by whom, our town government is effectively choosing what messages it wishes to promote. It must thus take responsibility for any negativity, lack of agreement, division that such postings may promote. Does the select board itself have the time, energy, and interest in policing what should be posted in our town for all of us to consider? Will the select board be able to dissect whether the messaging is welcome or harmful to all groups in Brookline? Finally, and most importantly, the select board's work should make this town a more unified, harmonious, and peaceful place to live and work. If images, for example, of dead, injured Palestinian children being pulled from the rubble were to be displayed on a bulletin board, wouldn't this be traumatic to the viewer?
You have 30 seconds.
Wouldn't this be potentially promoting discord, given the current war abroad? If the select board were to prohibit posting such images, but allow images of others in conflict abroad, would this not be illegal content discrimination? I ask that you consider these questions profoundly and keep the existing rules for public signage posting in a way that ultimately could provide more harm than relief to our population, not to mention more work for and discontent with the select board. Thank you.
The next person signed up for public comment is Reina Mumtaz. You can join us at the presentation station, introduce yourself, and your 3 minutes will begin.
Good evening. My name is Rana Mumtaz, Precinct 15, and thank you for letting me speak here tonight. Being a Brookline resident for over 22 years, for the first time, I'm seeing a distinct divide in our town, my town. We as residents have the responsibility to our community to ensure Brookline is a safe and welcoming place for all. We must all be able to point out prejudice, discrimination, hostile or hateful language, whether it be directed at Muslims, Jews, or Christians. My concern tonight is regarding the policy of signage in Brookline on town property. Signs are used for visual communication and representation. If the town allows placement of signs, who will be the gatekeeper? Who will decide what is visually disturbing and graphic and what is not? Who will control the equity? Who is allowed to put up these signs? Which groups will be and will not be? Who will approve the space, the size, the duration of placement, the content? Will current affairs be allowed to be posted on these signs? Will graphic images and pictures be allowed? Moreover, who will make the above-made decisions? How will these groups be formed? If all these parameters are not met equally, I fear our town will be further divided. I urge you to consider all of these questions before making any decisions. Our goal should be to unite our town, where we understand and respect each other's cultural differences and support our diversity. Thank you.
That concludes public comment at this time. You do have a handful of people signed up to speak at the conclusion of the board's business.
Thank you, Devin.
Do you want to make a comment in a minute and a half?
Good for you.
Hi there, Ala El Damati. Whatever precinct town hall is, because I live across the street from, is my precinct. Really quick, in a minute, I'm going to summarize. I have two questions, actually, since I don't have time to say all my comments. The first is, we had to go back, or I personally had to go back to the video of last meeting to try and find snippets of the document that was shared last time. And I'm just curious why that document isn't accessible publicly if we are, or the select board will be voting on it today. I found it difficult to try and figure out what I'm going to say or how I feel about it if I didn't have access to the document. So that's one thing I'd like to bring up. And the second thing, last time there was a discussion of complaint-based removal of illegal signs versus non-complaint based. I could not find that in the actual text of the document as I went back to see it. And I'm just curious if that is going to be included in the vote or not. Thank you. If you guys can clarify that, I'd really appreciate it.
So usually we don't engage in back and forth public comments. It just gets people into this idea that it's a conversation. But I do think it's important, the issue that you raised, so that people are aware. The policy is posted as part of the board's packet. If you go to the Brookline brooklinema.gov website and click on and under government, click on select board, you can then see to the right, there's a thing about select board meetings. The select board agenda is posted there. And if you click on the packet, the agenda packet, the document should be in there. We will obviously, it should be there from last week's, the last version. The updated version will be put on the screen for discussion this week. Regarding the question of enforcement is in the hands of DPW, the Department of Public Works. This is not a discussion about enforcement. It's a discussion about the policy itself. And again, we have not changed any of our policies in regards to any current events. The policy is and remains as it always has been. And we raised with the select board the possibility of discussing that. And I think the consensus among the board, although the board obviously has the right to discuss further, was to leave that unchanged, which is the DPW breaks the town down into sections. And when a complaint is received, it's translated into a work order and given to the person who goes out into that section to do regular care and maintenance. It is not addressed on an ad hoc basis unless it is a threat to life safety. So we do take complaints on Brook Online. We do turn those into work orders, but we do not prioritize them in any way based on their message or their content. We treat them the same way we treat everything else. And we will reinforce that very firmly over the course of the last few weeks where these issues have come into the public eye, because we want to be very mindful and respectful of everyone and be clear that this is not this is not an issue of viewpoint at all. It is an issue of, public cleanliness and the use of town resources. So we just want to be very clear that there has been no substantive change in the policy for enforcement, nor has the select board requested that of us, though obviously the select board has the right to, and if they do, we will work to implement it.
Okay, next, miscellaneous items. I understand that our minutes from last week are not available, so we'll postpone those. And then we have questions 3B through 3F, which board has had an opportunity to look at, and no question or no concerns or requests to discuss those in any greater detail have been presented to me. So I move approval of items 3B through 3F. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Mike Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Next, calendar items. Annual town election. Our town clerk, Ben Kaufman, I believe is, yep. He's zooming in to our meeting.
Thank you, Chair Green. The item that's before the board tonight is to set the date for the May 2024 annual town election. And simultaneous with that, put a list of who is actually going to be on the ballot, what offices are going to be on the ballot. There are kind of two reasons around this. The first is reasoning around the actual date for the annual town election. Under our town bylaws, it must be held on the first or second Tuesday in May. Traditionally, we've always done it on the first Tuesday. This provides consistency to voters. All of the other elections, the presidential primary, the state primary, and the November presidential election that will be held next year will be on the first Tuesday of the month. So having that consistency for the election being held on the first Tuesday in May will make it easier for our voters to know when to show up at the polls. The other is why we are having this discussion now, as opposed to the usual time when the board will set the date for the annual town election, which is at a meeting in January. And that is because 2024 is a bit of a unique election year for us. It's a presidential election year, which means we will have a presidential primary in March. That means that in December, we're beginning to do a lot of outreach to voters, to vendors, to our poll workers, to start getting information out about both the March primary as well as the other elections we have that year. So if we know the date for the annual town election, we're able to include that information in all of these communications. Perhaps most notably, we're currently working on the annual town census mailing that will go to every household in Brookline. And we're going to include in that one pager with information about the 2024 election cycle. And we'd be able to include information about the May election in that. So this is going to allow us to get ahead of the curve in terms of scheduling with our vendors, scheduling our poll workers, and educating our voters on when the election is going to occur. So in the packet is the actual language of the vote, but it essentially just would set the date for the annual town election as May 7th, 2024, and it lists the offices that are currently expected to be on that ballot. I'm not asking you tonight to vote on some of the other things that will go around the annual town election, like actually executing the warrant, assigning police details, or setting dates for early voting. This is just setting the date for the annual town election so we can begin our planning for 2024.
Paul.
Hi, good evening, Ben. Thank you for walking us through that. I'm just curious, you were probably familiar with the reporting that was done by Cypress, the high school newspaper. It did some analysis about the number of, I guess, mail-in or absentee ballots that didn't make it in time to be counted. I think there were 800, approximately 800. And I'm just curious, does this getting started a month before, it sounds like we're a little bit ahead, does that help with that? Or is there a specific plan to help prevent a recurrence of that in the future?
Sure. So some of this can be helped by getting started a month out. It allows us to be a little bit ahead of the curve for the various work that needs to go into the May election. The challenges that happened back in May of 2023 that were written about in the Cypress, when they occurred, I actually had brought it to our state legislature, our state legislative delegation, the Secretary of the Commonwealth's office, and the Mass Town Clerks Association, because many of the issues actually require a change in state law to be remedied. So I had recommended they look at the timeline for when the ballot is actually set, as well as a potential ability for us to count ballots that are received after the election day, as long as they are postmarked on or before election day. That is something we're able to do for the November presidential election, but we are not able to do for our annual town election. So those are changes that would require a legislative fix from the state. And they are ones that I have brought to their attention, and I'm sure others have brought to their attention as well. In terms of what we've been doing to try to address that since that occurred, one of the big things we've done is reached out to our vendors and talked them through what happened, what some of the logistical issues were around our ballot layout last year that caused a couple of days delay in our ballots. As well as work that we've done to kind of remedy the postal service issues that we're experiencing in Brookline and across the country. One of the big ones that you might have seen when you were walking in tonight is we procured 3 additional ballot drop boxes using ARPA funds. One has been installed in front of the Coolidge Corner Library, one in front of the Putterham Library, and one in front of Town Hall. And that will allow voters, instead of having to mail their ballots back, can drop them in those boxes, and that will alleviate any delays that the post office might be experiencing in delivering our ballots. So it's stuff that we're still trying to work on internally, what we can, trying to work with our local postal delivery to ensure that all ballots get to us, as well as something that requires action at the state level and action at the federal level with our post office. But it's something that we are working very hard on to make sure that we're able to get as many ballots in and counted as we can, because that's the whole point of our elections.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben. John.
Thank you, Ben. And I hope this is sufficiently relevant to the matter on which we're voting, that you'll indulge just a couple of more questions on this business of the ballots that arrived after Election Day. So to be absolutely clear, so that everyone listening understands what the current state of the law is, I heard you say that ballots that do not arrive by, I'm assuming 8 p.m. On Election Day, even if they were postmarked, days before, they're not counted. And that's true not just in Brookline, but everywhere in the state, in a
Correct.
municipal election. Yeah.
That is true everywhere for municipal elections. It has to be received by the town clerk's office at 8 p.m. on election.
So nothing extraordinary happened in Brookline that, other than the number of them, that couldn't have happened in any other community. And I don't think we know what happened in other communities. And it clearly has something to do with an issue in the post office. I seem to recall that there were advisories put out to people that if you, put your ballot in the mail and you're worried that it might not have shown up, show up at the polls and the poll worker will check you in and determine if your vote has already been counted. Isn't that right?
So that is correct. So if you mail your ballot into us and you're not sure about it, or you call us, you can always call us. We'll tell you if we've received your ballot or not. And then you can always come. You can vote in person during early voting. You can vote in person on election day. If we've already received your ballot, our poll workers will have that on the list, and they will tell you you're all set and tell you to go home. If they know definitively that we don't have your ballot, they will allow you to vote. If they're not sure, they will have you vote by a provisional ballot, and we will then sort out later whether or not that needs to get counted. So our advice is always send your ballot back as early as you can. If possible, deliver it to the town clerk's office or to one of our ballot drop boxes. Those are emptied regularly by staff from the clerk's office, so it ensures it will get to us on time. And when in doubt, go on election day. The worst thing that will happen is we'll tell you your vote's already here, you're all set.
Yeah, great, thank you. And because a lot of people, that the story, which by the way was excellently reported by the student journalists from the BHS newspaper, the Cypress, and it's online, so people should look it up if they're interested. But the headline number got a lot of attention. It was 800 plus ballots that arrived after Election Day and were never counted. Was anything done to determine how many of those ballots actually came from people who actually had voted? Because, they were sent late and the person did get nervous and did show up and did vote.
So that's not an analysis that we have done, but you're absolutely right that number will include voters who showed up and voted on Election Day. That number will also include ballots that might have been postmarked after Election Day and were received later after Election Day.
Right.
We sometimes have people who don't get their ballots postmarked even by Election Day. And even if the state law were to be changed to allow us to count some late arriving ballots, we still wouldn't have been able to count.
So is that analysis being done? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Didn't mean to.
We have not done that analysis, but I'm happy to look into it and see if we can get some more information for it.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Ben. And I will now move to call the annual town election on May 7, 2024 from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. for the purpose of electing the following offices: town moderator for 3 years, town clerk for 3 years, 2 select board members for 3 years, 4 trustees of the public library for 3 years, 3 members of the school committee for 3 years, 1 commissioner of the housing authority for 5 years, 5 town meeting members for 3 years in all precincts, and 1 town meeting member for 1 year in precincts 1, 10, and 13. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Constables?
Didn't I say constables? No,
can
I
just
don't
say-
see any constables in here.
Constables should be in there as well. 5 constables for 3 years.
Okay, sorry, it's not in my vote here.
Oh, my apologies
So
if that.
add to that 5 constables for how many years?
3 years.
3 years. Okay, thank you for catching that.
Partridge up here.
Okay, don't want to hear from some of those constables. Matter of fact, there's one out there in the audience who would have yelled at us. Okay, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac,
Aye.
Mike Sandman,
Aye.
Paul Warren,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next. National Community Survey, question of approving the contract between Policy Confluence, Inc. and Town of Brookline for the National Community Survey, formerly known as the National Citizen Survey, in the amount of $31,000. I'll note that there are changes to the contract based on the discussions we had a couple weeks ago regarding the ownership of the data, as well as the, I think they call it creative materials. And those changes, in my opinion, satisfy the concerns that people had. Anything else you want to add to?
I just think as part of this discussion, I would really appreciate guidance from the board on the types of questions you would like to ask as part of this contract. As part of this contract, we get a page of questions in addition to the typical questions that have been asked regularly on this survey. So yeah, if there are specific questions you want to ask the community about, or specific types of questions you would like us to help generate, we'd really welcome your guidance so that we can bring you a draft of it on the 19th.
Okay, what I was thinking of doing is voting on the contract.
Okay.
First, and then having that discussion. Any questions or comments about the contract?
I just wanted to clarify. So we have until December 19th?
Yeah. So I mean, I would like some basic feedback from you now so that I can get a draft to you for your review and comment, and we can finalize them on the 19th.
Or immediately to following this meeting, maybe an
Yes.
email to you or something.
Yes, that's fine. If you'd rather talk immediately after the meeting, I just think, if you have thoughts now, by all means, or thereafter, just let me know and I will prepare a draft to a public draft to circulate.
Great.
I think probably on all of our minds to a greater or lesser extent is a set of questions and they have to be carefully crafted so as not to bias the results, about what people understand about the structure of town government and whether they're happy with it, whether there's any thought of moving to a different structure. As I say, that's a tough question to ask in a neutral way. And if the folks who run the survey can help with that phrasing, that would be great.
Yeah, okay. So, can we vote on this contract
First?
first?
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Sorry.
Why not?
Oh, no, that's appropriate for you to
Yeah.
make that point. All in favor of the contract with Policy Confluence, Inc. and the town of Brookline for the National Community Survey, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Mike Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Okay, so now let's talk about the questions that will be on our one page of Brookline specific and special questions. So,
Chaz, can I ask just a question about the parameters around questions? The questions that are here on the screen look more kind of open-ended.
Right.
And they're qualitative
Yes.
type of questions.
Yes.
Is there a difference or benefit to qualitative, quantitative?
I mean, yes, you get different results. I think,
Yeah.
qualitative is always interesting in terms of feedback, but it's often harder to elicit responses, especially meaningful responses. Whereas a quantitative, please rank on a scale of 1 to 10. How satisfied are you with X? That gives you concrete data points. But to Mike's point, we have to be very careful about ensuring that we are not, inherently biasing. For example, I think some people say, if you ask the question, how happy are you with the current town government? You might get a certain response. If you ask the question, should the town have a mayor? You might get a very different response, even if people might draw, a different conclusion, when you frame a question that way. So we want to be cognizant when we ask questions that don't allow for a narrative response, that we're not putting our finger on the scale, towards a particular response. But yes, either is possible. You can have an open-ended narrative question, or
Right.
you can have a quantitative.
I guess I've like Mike or John, I probably need more time on this, but the information needs to be actionable, right? I think if it's, do you like the structure of our government? I mean, who the heck would know how to answer that? Most of them don't know the structure of the government. It's more of are you able to engage? Do you know how to engage?
Right.
Questions around interactions and quality, I think, are important, and outcomes. But again, people just may not know what the structure is. That could be helpful. What our structure, do you think we're a city or a town? I mean, a lot of people probably think we're already a city.
Yeah, and I think, we do have that set. I do think it's important. I'll recirculate to the board, just the regular set of questions that are asked, which, has general questions about satisfaction with various different types of services. It goes into specific detail about, how happy are you with, for example, public safety? How happy are you with, sanitation? All those
Sure.
Baseline questions about town services.
I guess if I could just follow one more question, Bernard. Thanks for being patient with me. So I assume that given the scope of services and the number of surveys that the consultant or the company that we're engaging with has done, they might be able to provide us with some samples that other communities have used, right?
Yes. And I think, what we'll ask them just based on this conversation, and we'll go back to them and say, have you done surveys where communities have been considering, reevaluating their system of government?
Right.
What questions have been asked? What have you found to be effective questions in those
Right.
circumstances?
That'd be really helpful.
yeah, but we also want to make sure that we're asking questions that sort of elicit from people their concerns with the form of government. Where do they see, impediments to their participation? What things can they identify for us where we can actually fix it without going through all the rigmarole of changing form of government or whatever? There are a lot of things that we can do that people can alert us to that are easy to fix, irrespective of what we're going to do ultimately in terms of our form of government. So,
And so I'm sorry.
Yeah, John.
No, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did until the recording in progress.
I'm
I'm sorry.
You want me to jump in? I'll jump in and
Yeah,
then
go
you can
ahead.
jump in. Okay. I'm gonna throw a little bit of a curveball here. We just had a town meeting where one of the actions taken by the town meeting was to provide for the appointment of a committee to study our form of government. And I'm expecting that that committee is going to get into, you know, into all of these questions having to do with our form of government in some depth. And maybe they'll even do a survey of their own. There's no way of telling right now. And we don't have that much capacity in this survey that we're going to do through this group to get to a lot of questions. And I think we might want to consider the possibility of leaving the questions about people's satisfaction with the form of government. Do they understand the difference between a town and a city, blah, 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 you know, to the committee that's going to be studying our form of government. So that's the curveball. What that would then, to me, open up is greater potential to get to the nitty gritty of, I think of this survey in terms of our work on the budget every year. And, you know, when we work on the budget every year, we are well aware of the various services that are offered by the town and and the difference between them in terms of the amount of money that it takes to provide those services. And it would be useful to know how much do people depend on the various services that are provided by our town hall or our police department, our fire department, our health department, our recreation department. And those are the questions I'm really interested in getting information on. I want to be able to say, well, gosh, I would have thought, you know, there was a lot more interest in X than there seems to be on the part of the people who were surveyed, because we sure do spend a lot of money in that area, you know. You know, I was shocked at how many people said they wish we had more of Y, and we hardly spend any money in that area. That's what I'm looking to get.
Wouldn't those questions be in the regular, in the main part of the survey?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
some of them are, but I
Yeah.
think, you know, you know, that's where we want to, you know, you can dig deeper into some of those things. I think the questions are really based around satisfaction of services. But I think there's a question of, you know, do you utilize this service, you know, or to your question earlier, Bernard, you know, has there been a time when there's a particular service you wanted to obtain from town government but could not? You know, whether that was an issue of access, you know, was it that the website was hard to access? Was it that there was an accessibility issue, someone differently abled and not able to access services that they need to have from us? Is it they couldn't figure out, you know, how to get, for example, on the town's waste pickup? You know, we have, you know, some unique fragments of earlier forms of doing business that other communities have either subsumed into municipal operations or dealt with differently, that make our operation somewhat unique. And I think it's worthwhile to ask those kinds of questions about, you know, what service, you know, have you requested a service from the town and have you not been able to get it? And if so, why?
Right.
Yeah, Mike.
So following up on John's question, which I think it'd be very helpful if we had, in terms of formulating our own questions, had a copy of the standard set of questions, because then you can see what in there is responsive to what you're asking about, which are all very good questions, and what isn't, and then we can, if we need to add something related to the things that are not, that we'd like to know, that would be an opportunity.
Devin sent that around earlier. Could you send that again?
We'll
I mean,
recirculate.
It's,
Yes.
yeah, it's a lot of information.
I recall that it was a lot, and I, you know, therefore it is gone. And
Yeah, right.
I need it back.
Well,
Yeah.
I want to agree with Mike. I think having the full picture so we know where the gaps are. I think John is onto something with, it may already be in the existing survey questions, but really a prioritization of services, right? Ranking the services that you'd like to, based on priority and value or something.
Yeah.
But I go back to when we initiated this discussion around the survey. It was intended to try to get at this form of government thing that I think Bernard raised this, you know, over the summer. So is there a way to integrate what we're doing in parallel with this committee that's being formed by the moderator? Will they, is there enough time where they could ask and populate a couple of questions?
I think we're probably just too crunched for time right now, given I don't know where the moderator is on forming this.
We're probably ahead of them.
You're a little ahead of them just in terms of.
Okay.
But our results can be provided to them.
Yes.
To inform their deliberation.
At the very least, you'll be able to have that, they'll be able to have the benefit of the information you collect. And to the extent that they want to follow up on particular areas or seek their own survey that covers different things, they can do that.
Okay.
Miriam,
I
are you
mean,
just
I
looking
have-
pensive?
We are, and I have caught up
Okay.
and, I mean, I really have, the only thing I would add is we don't really know yet the makeup of the moderators committee too, which I do think matters. So, but
Oh.
I don't really have anything substantive to add.
So the questions that are on your screen are sort of the beginning. And the questions from the survey.
I don't, yeah.
Oh, we'll put it back up.
Yeah, where,
Do you
They're
want to?
not in the pack, it's not in the.
yeah, I
packet.
don't see it in the packet either.
What would you like to see? Do you want to see the custom questions or the general questions?
Both.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, yeah.
So I will.
But
start
no, we don't need to see them in the second because we're not going to be able to absorb all of that.
Right.
Anyway,
I think it'd be best if this could be provided to us.
Yeah.
And then we could provide
Yeah.
feedback to Chaz, either email, and then we can have another discussion.
Right. My hope is to have, a draft for your discussion on the 19th so we can finalize these. In an ideal world, we'd have time on the 14th, but the reality of the situation is you got a lot to cover. Your
Yeah.
retreat calendar is quite full at this point.
And focus on questions that will give us a sense of what people think about their relationship to the town
Mhm.
and, how that can be improved. Because I think that really is most helpful. One of many things that would be helpful. And that would give us some ideas as to how we can do things, just as a select board, as opposed to going through, a town meeting or going through a big, change in structure or whatever. Do things, on a fairly quick quick basis to address some of people's some of the concerns that people have expressed. So that's okay. Any further discussion of this necessary?
oh, let's vote.
Okay, let's move right along. Oh, fun. Fiscal year 24 tax classification vote. Okay, so we have our town assessor, our finance director, and one of the members of the Board of Assessors. So let's see. So this is following up on last week's tax classification hearing. And tonight, we are scheduled to vote on allocating among different classes of property the taxes that will generate the revenue that the town will have to pay for its operations. The revenue is called the levy. And we'll vote on two items in order to set the tax rate for 2024 to be paid by the different classes of property. One, the residential factor, so-called, that is the percentage of the tax levy to be borne by each major class of property, and those classes are residential and what we're calling CIP as a sort of abbreviation for commercial, industrial, and personal. And two, we'll be voting on the residential exemption, which we always love to do, which shifts the burden between lower assessed residential values and properties that are higher assessed residential values. And that is one of the ways in which the select board has some control and power over setting the tax rate and how it falls on different types of property. So let's see. And by doing that, we're going to be deciding in a very small way, but still a significant way, who we want to help using the tax classification tool. And between single family properties, multifamily properties, condominiums, and commercial property. So we're going to be making decisions that will help or not hurt, but additionally burden, those classes of property. So Mr. Rasson,
Uh,
tell us what you want to tell us.
good evening.
And tell me if I got anything wrong there.
Yeah,
Oh, hold on.
I'm disabled.
Should be all set.
Right. Good evening. My name is Rashid Balazin, Chief Assessor.
But I apologize. I screwed up your name.
Or-
I screw up my own name. Don't worry about it.
That's all right.
Is that mine all the time?
Yeah.
Um,
It's a problem of being the chair. I mean, Neil Wyszynski used to always do that. He would call me Ben Franco and Ben Franco Bernard Green. So there's something about this seat that messes up our brains though.
No comment.
Yeah, that was a weird mistake that he made.
Oh, two bald guys.
Yeah, that's right.
So this is the second night part of the tax classification. Last week we were here before you presenting you the material to help you make vote for the portion of the taxes to be borne by each class of properties, commercial, residential, and personal property. The material is available here tonight. We can, if there's any questions or going back over the slides. And tonight we ask for your votes to establish a residential factor, and that's to determine the number of the amount of taxes to be borne by each class, and also to adopt the percentage of the residential exemption, which allows shifting taxes within the residential class. So I do have the material. If there are any additional questions, or I'll be happy to answer the questions, or help you with the vote.
Miriam, you're itching to
Yes, so,
questions.
it's not a question. We received I have two comments. The first three comments. First, thank you. It's an immense amount of work to prepare this portfolio. Like I said to Paul, the first year I got it, I didn't know which way was up. So it's really very well done. And once you know what you're looking for and what you're looking at, it's actually very helpful the way you present the information. So thank you for that. The second thing I would say is I assume the other select board members got it, a very interesting email talking about a progressive tax and suggesting a residential tax exemption of 23%. Now, you don't need to go into, I am a big fan of a progressive tax. I don't think now is the time or place in Brookline for this progressive tax, because I do think already with the high valuation, we're already pushing the burden onto, we're already seeing a large tax increase with the override and the debt exclusion. But I just want to put out there to that person, it was an interesting email. I'm totally for progressive taxes, but at this juncture, I'm going to support a 20% residential tax exemption with a 1.75 CIP. And that was my third point.
Mike.
Mike's.
So I was gonna comment on the same letter, because I think and I wrote back to the letter writer that on the one hand, what he's saying is residential tax is a progressive tax to cover the exemption. The tax rates raised for all residential properties. For small homeowners, the amount more than offsets the higher tax rate. For large homeowners, the amount doesn't offset it, and they pay more. And that, but really what that amounts to is it's for homeowners whose homes have gone up in value. But that's paper value. We shift the burden of taxation even more to single family homeowners, even with the 20%, and away from owner occupants of condos and owners of rental properties, as the great documentation that you put together showed us, because the assessed value of houses in the last year has risen faster than the assessed value of other properties. It's true that the assessed value has increased, but that's money that the owner of a single family house is being taxed on, that they don't have. They don't have the money until they sell the house. And so you might make that as an argument for a real estate transfer tax, but it's not a particularly good argument for disproportionately pushing the, even more of the burden onto that class of property owners. So I would say I'm also interested in the 20%.
Okay, so we have 20%.
And 1.75 CIP.
And
And 1.75
Yep.
commercial factor.
Yep.
Okay. You know, the wealth or the increased value of a house is tied up into something that can't be easily.
that's what I say,
monetized.
yeah, yeah.
But it can be monetized, and I'm not sure.
Well, it can be monetized by borrowing. Yeah.
Well, by borrowing or using, you know, the equity in the house for financing your kids' education, for example.
That's borrowing.
Yeah, borrowing that way.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, I mean, it's a very complex issue, okay?
Right, okay.
But I don't think it's something that you can say the fact that the house value has increased significantly is not real value.
Oh, it's
Right.
real
Oh,
value, but it's
real value, yeah.
unrealized value. It's
unrealized.
unrealized value.
What, John?
You have a percentage?
What, no, we'll go with John. No, I'm listening. I have a more of a question, but
just
I want to
like
hear
leave
from
the
John.
conversation alone.
I'm in
I
lis-
guess.
listening mode. Right?
Okay.
Yeah. It's very, you know, it's hard to make a case that is, you know, that I'm passionate about, that this should go to 21. I think we made the right move when we went to 21. And I think the fact that, you know, that the case for going to 23 is 23%, I'm talking about, it is basically to move towards greater progressivity. But in fact, that communities like Cambridge have taken full advantage of what is the allowable range under the law and have gone all the way to 35%. So I don't think we'd be doing anything that radical if we went to 23%. We would be moving more in the direction of a more progressive system, which is more progressive within the category of single-family residential. It has different consequences for condo owners, and well, condo owners are part of that first category, but it has different consequences for renters. And I think that's what gives all of us a lot of pause, in that the letter writer makes an argument that although seemingly this would hit renters hard because of the high value of large buildings with lots of apartments in them, in fact, this particular writer wants to persuade us that the rental market doesn't work that way, and that owners of rental properties, especially many properties with many units in them, that they find a way to pay their taxes without necessarily putting all of the tax increase that they might experience in a given year into their rent, because if they put it all into their rent, they'd lose tenants, and their rents would then be out of line with the market rents in the region. And that's why you don't see that consequence to the extent that you might fear it in the rental properties. But I wouldn't blame people who are in rental properties from fearing it. And so I don't think we're ready to go, as Cambridge did, all the way to 35. But I do think we were ready to go to 21 and did, and that was progress in the right direction. And then we reversed that progress. I'd like to get back to 21, and then every year, hopefully with some more analysis from our own staff, try to figure out, is 23 actually better than 21? And if 23 is better than 21, is something approaching, you know, the high end of what's allowable even better than 23? I don't think we really have an answer to that question yet. So I'm not proposing anything too dramatic.
Paul?
I'd like to hear from you. Do you have an opinion?
You know, one way of looking at this is how close to the so-called levy limit we get to with the various exemptions and factors. You know, from that standpoint, 20% and a residential factor of 0.925715 leaves only or gets us within $1,565 of our levy limit. Now that, may not be a relevant, issue or an appropriate way of looking at this, but that's one way of seeing how efficient is our decision making. But
Yeah, so
that's the extent of my
Okay,
opinion
so
at this point.
this is helpful for me. So I have thought quite a bit about this. There's a few key factors for me, that criteria. One is I do feel that a 10% is a threshold that I don't want to go over for anybody. That seems like
10%.
10%, like it has to be below 10% for
What
anybody.
has to be below 10%?
So
Tax rate.
the tax rate.
Tax
So yeah, the tax.
Overall tax increase.
Yeah, that overall tax increase, it has to be below 10%. The second is I'm looking for balance across, as much balance and fairness across, the classifications. That would be the second criteria. And then also leaving as little on the table. I think, Bernard, is what you were saying, was how much is left over with the levy. And so I think I'm landing on 20% at the 1.75. I think is where I'm at. I think it provides a little bit more balance across the classifications. I'm not seeing, big 4% break on condos. We're below 10% on single families. I don't see a huge drop on commercial. And while I would like to see a little bit bump in multi-apartment, I think 2%, is reasonable in that classification, given what we've talked about with rents. So I think I'm comfortable with 20%. I think that's where I'm at. 20%, 1.75.
Okay, question. So we're hearing unanimity around 20% and 1.75. Isn't that where we are at now? Is that where we are at now?
Yes, you're very close. You're like a point under 1.75 from
Yeah.
last year, just because that was how we rounded it out to get you to the point where there was the minimum amount of levy gap left. But yes, and 1.75 is the maximum. I think I don't want to distract from the discussion, but there is a question that I would put to the board, which is there has now been in Watertown a successful effort to increase the amount of CIP shift permissible. That is to say, to move the CIP factor beyond 1.75 in certain circumstances by means of a home rule petition. And so that is an area where, we can look into in terms of, a potential future for a warrant article or analysis there. I think as as we endeavor to, grow our commercial tax base, we want to be cautious about, the pressures we put on it. But at the same time, I think we've demonstrated through the growth that we've seen now that at the current level, those taxes are sustainable, and we should be querying, the impetus in Watertown for making that decision, and whether or not we might be we might consider in the future seeking permission from the legislature to go above that ratio.
Have they passed a home rule petition and it's been approved?
Been approved. The legislature approved it, which was surprising to us. We didn't think that was going to happen.
And how high, what was the cap, Jim?
Rashid, do you remember? I think it's like 2 something.
No, Watertown. So what happened in Watertown, there's so much commercial development the last few years, and they could not shift anymore towards the commercial because of the growth. And they were limited at 150.
Oh, they were in the opposite direction.
So so what they did is went to the legislature and asked that they change the percentage of taxes to be borne by commercial and residential and make it a 50-50. So they're able to actually shift to up to 173, and that's the maximum they could go this year, but they could go up next year.
So we want to have their problem with too much commercial, where we have to go ask for a higher rate. I mean, we need to grow the pie.
Right.
We're talking about slicing and moving the pie wedge around.
Right.
But ultimately, we need to increase we need to make the pie bigger. That's what we need to do.
Yeah.
That's where we should focus.
Yep.
Oh, well, that part of the pie.
Make the pie bigger.
Good analogy.
So I think that we have 3 options that on the table here, from the standpoint of, what people are concerned with, and that is not just 1.75 for the commercial factor, but also 1.741 and 1.732, because each of those have a minimum impact on multi-family, three-family, two-family, condo, and single-family, relatively minimal, but have a major impact on commercial. And I think that, you know, we should think about whether we want to encourage commercial properties, especially small businesses. And there is a provision in the statute that allows for a small business exemption. And I asked, I guess I asked Melissa to look into that. There was a study done a few years ago on that. And you know, apparently there were some issues that made it difficult, but you know, that's something that we should consider maybe in the future. But you know, each of those factors have different impacts on commercial development, with 1.732 having the most impact in commercial. So that's, you know, another issue to look at. Mike?
So, Rashid, I think I'm correct in saying that typical commercial leases are triple net. So it's the lessor, the person who's renting the space, that pays the tax.
Right.
I think that's an important thing to say. It's not the property owner who pays the tax. So if you're decreasing the burden on commercial or increasing the burden on commercial, it's going directly to the business operator,
Right.
not to the
Who we
landowner.
care about.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's just the point. Yeah.
Any further discussion? So I think we have agreement on the residential exemption of 20%. But what about the residential factor and commercial factor?
I mean,
Yes.
I hear what you're saying. I think we still have relatively low commercial tax rates, so I'm still okay with the 1.75. So that's where I sit.
1.7.
Yeah, that's where I'm at 1.75 too.
That will cause the median rate to go down slightly. Again, the median.
So they still, right.
Right. It's not everyone's taxes, but the median goes down.
Mike, is that where you're at?
Yes, yeah, I think
Okay.
that, honestly, I think that's the course of least resistance here.
Yeah.
I think we can drive
Okay, that's
ourselves
3
crazy for
votes.
tenths of
we can go home now.
yeah.
There could be 5 votes. I don't know. I don't know
Pardon me?
where are you guys at? Are you-
Or at least 3 votes.
There's at least 3 votes, but you know, I'm curious to what John thinks.
Oh, no, you know, at 1.75, which is the sort of consensus view here, it's not like it's punitive for commercial properties. They're getting, you know, a 1% reduction
Right.
in their taxes. Condos are getting a 1% reduction in their taxes. And I think this just underscores what is the overriding reality of the tax decision this year. And I'm just going to sum it up. And that is that because of the different ways that property values have moved in the past year, property values of commercial property values of multi-unit apartment properties, property values of 3 families, 2 families, condos, and single families, they've all moved in different ways. And it's in the nature of our, I think, very quirky system of local taxation that when that happens, it's the misfortune of those whose property values went up the most, that they're going to get hit hard. And that's what's happening to single family homes this year. And it's in the nature of our quirky system that those whose values may have gone down a little bit will actually get a little bit of a tax reduction. And so judging from what's in the booklet that we're using as the basis for our vote tonight, single family properties are going to get hit the hardest. 3 family properties are going to get hit next hardest. Multi-unit apartment properties are going to get hit next hardest. 2 family properties and all of those 4 categories are going to get increases of some kind, from just over 1% to, don't take these numbers as gospel, but just so you can compare, this is from a low of on the table we're looking at. And this is just looking at what's going to happen in terms of the tax take from these categories of properties as a whole. It doesn't necessarily mean your individual bill is going to go up this much. Huh? Yes, the mileage may vary. Thank you for that. So among the classes of properties, taken as a whole, two families, just over 1%, multi-unit buildings and with apartments around 2%, three-family properties around just over between 5 and 6%. And then single-family properties almost 10%. And then the reductions will be for condos, which will get about a 1% reduction as a class, and commercial just over 1% reduction as a class. That's the vote we're taking.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion? Since three of you at least are for 20% residential exemption and 1.75 for the commercial factor.
Me too.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
and I go along with it. I move, why don't we just move this?
Yes,
There's need for
sounds good.
further discussion.
And I do think there's specific language you need to use in
Okay.
the
Yeah,
authorized vote.
I do have the votes. You just display them on the screen.
Okay, it's on our,
We will put it up on the screen here,
He's going to put it on the screen.
and I can put it up on my screen here.
Sorry about that.
oh, it's in the book.
There, it just,
This is the, can't see much yet.
Oh, it's not in the book.
So plus sign and after that,
Mhm.
there you go.
There you go. I can read it. There you go.
In the whole, all right.
There you go. There we go. I got the plus sign here. There you
Yeah, leave it up with
go.
the.
So the, this is the language.
No, I haven't.
You have it.
Yeah, okay. So I'll just move it. I move that the select board adopt a residential exemption percentage of 20% for fiscal year 2024 for the provisions of section 5C of chapter 59.
And so I think that's your first vote.
That's the first vote. Okay, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac,
Aye.
Miriam Ashkenazi,
Aye.
Mike Sandman,
Aye.
Paul Warren.
aye,
Chair votes aye. Next, I move that the select board adopt a residential factor of 9 point,
Oh, sorry,
Sorry,
0.9.
point.
I'm sorry, 0.923888, which represents a CIP factor of 1.75, and the corresponding tax rates: residential 9.77, commercial 16.41, with an excess levy capacity of $15,356, which is not a lot of money in a $3 billion or $300 billion levy.
Million, please, we're not.
300 million, right?
You think we are Cambridge?
Wait. and we do whatever we want now.
Yeah.
That's some
Um,
ideas.
That's it.
But at any rate, yeah, so we're leaving money on the table, but it's not, a
We still have to
significant
vote on
amount
that.
within the
Right.
broad scheme of things.
Yeah.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac,
Aye.
Miriam Ashkenazi,
Aye.
Mike Sandman,
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rashid. Thanks, Lincoln.
Thanks, Rashid. That was
Thank you.
very helpful.
you.
Next, departmental fee updates. We're talking only about fire prevention fees. And yeah. Good evening.
Evening. I'm Deputy Chief Todd Cantor, representing Chief Sullivan. The chief sent you a memo, and you should find it in your packet, that you'll find the proposed fees. Some of these have been in use for a while and some are new. Some of the biggest changes are that they are more specified and others are new to the code, being that we used to just use a generalized permit and add language to the permit, and with Acela, we're able to specify the language in the permits more accurately, and the recent edition of the new fire code has allowed us permitting for a couple of different items.
Okay, any discussion or questions?
I'm just really curious what tar kettle is.
Tar kettles are used, they're not used very often anymore. And it was back in the day when they used to take the tar and warm it on the roof and mop it across the surface.
Oh, yeah, before rubber roofs.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe tarring and feathering the
Yeah,
select
I
board
was-
members, you know?
I thought,
Okay, any further discussion or questions?
No.
Okay, do we have a vote in here
Right in your script.
in my script? Okay. Okay, I move approval of the, okay, question making changes to the following departmental fee schedules under the provisions of Mass General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 22F, fire prevention fees. So I move approval of the fees as presented in the packet and as we just discussed. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Miriam Ashkenazi.
aye.
Mike Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was easy. Yes.
Have we received anything from Transportation Board with regard to parking meter fees? Where does that stand?
We had a conversation with the chair. Obviously we want to be clear on where we are there. The board has voted an increase to $1.75. The concern that staff raised was, are we going to raise it to $1.75 and then raise it to $2 again next year? Might it be better to make the jump now, given, what we've been considering using that additional revenue for? But I think we want to have that discussion. We don't want to just run that through. We don't want to jam that through. We want to be very clear on what the need is and what the recommendations are.
And has there been any discussion at all about setting a variable rate such that a ceiling so that the transportation division can make adjustments based on location within the town?
There is a
time of day?
two-tiered system in place right now. There are certain spots that are already charged at $2 an hour, but
right.
regarding, effectively peak pricing, we haven't had that discussion yet. Although I'm happy to discuss it with the transportation division and
Yeah, I mean, that's something I suggested when I was on the Transportation Board, which has to go back like 15 years. And at the time, the Select Board wasn't interested in it. But I would love to have a further discussion about essentially peak pricing and differential pricing depending on area.
I'll take that back to the transportation division and we'll get you a memo.
Good idea.
Okay. Next, our sign policy.
Right. Okay.
You want to lead this discussion, Chad?
If it's all right with you, just to kind
Sure.
of walk, because I figure what we should do is put it up on the board so that everyone can see the policy, the draft of the policy as it currently exists. We can walk through the kind of points in the memo I sent to you late last night about decision points. And again, I apologize for it coming into the packet relatively late, but I wanted to hold this until I was confident that everyone in the community had an opportunity to comment, and we were actually getting a full spectrum of comments involved in this. And even then, I got comments on the limited public forum, the sort of bulletin board provision. I sent you this memo just after midnight, and I got comments this morning on that. So of course,
here,
you can never really entirely put a cutoff on it. But let me just show you let me begin by showing the revised policy. Very little has changed between the previous version that we discussed last week, that was in your packets last week, and this week. The only substantive change is that there was a reference to the POW MIA flag as being one of the flags that was unrestricted to fly. We since looked into that, and the requirements there for that flag are limited to federal structures and federal flagpoles and so forth. So we are not bound by those regulations, and so we've removed that. Obviously, to the extent, there's a community desire for it, that can be covered as part of what I think is the major substantive argument or point of discussion for the board today, which is about that question of flags. So the current version of the policy, very similar to the last version of the policy, talks about the purpose, maintaining the principle that this is a politically neutral entity, continues to use the same definition of fixture. It's, cleaned up a little bit in terms of discussing, the name of a publicly owned building, the date of a building's construction. It makes very clear that only the select board may place or authorize placement of fixtures on town property. And I know people have been discussing the bylaw, the sign bylaw, and I think this works in harmony with the sign bylaw, because one of the things the sign bylaw expressly says is that town signs placed on town property are exempt from the signs bylaw. So the question of what is the select board's policy about town signs on town property is answered by this policy. So it fills in the blank there that's left by the bylaw for you to fill in. The restrictions still are still maintained. No political messages, no advertising messages, no religious messages, no messages that would violate other policies like conflict of interest, or any messages that are inconsistent with the vision statements or your mission statements that you may adapt.
Can we
Sure.
discuss this because this is one of the main pieces of this policy. And, what's missing is, not sure how you would phrase it, but messages that present controversial views or views that may incite controversy or that may be offensive or cause pain or embarrassment to some groups and residents.
I think there the issue is probably you're going to have a hard time defining what's controversial and what isn't.
Yeah, but yeah, you always have a hard time
On the
defining things.
contrary, everything in Brookline is controversial.
I think you want to have a clarity in terms of you want to have clear guidance to the community about what you do and don't allow. And I think when one person's controversy is another person's cause celebre, and you really want to be careful about saying, I'm sorry, that message is too controversial for us. You might wind up in more hot water than you intended by trying to limit the discussion.
Yeah, but then we open up the door to a lot of things that can be very destructive and painful to the communities. I'm not sure how you do that, but
I think the way you deal with that, Bernard, is if Chaz were to scroll further down, I think we eliminate the opportunity to have this shared space of where people can just post stuff.
You're talking about like the bulletin board.
Yeah, the bulletin. I think if
Yeah.
you eliminate, based on feedback that we heard from the community quite extensively and passionately, if you eliminate, Chaz, I think is a little bit further down. Is
Yep,
it the
I'm
limited
sorry,
public forum?
I'm getting the track changes.
That's
up so
okay.
We can.
I think we just eliminate this idea of a shared bulletin board where someone can post something and we're the arbiter of what gets posted. Let's get out of that business.
Great.
And I think that solves the
I
problem.
agree with Paul on that.
Absolutely.
Yep,
yeah.
that can be done. So here's what.
And we don't need to define it. We don't have to deal with it.
Well, but we still, I mean, as written now, we still have the ability to approve fixtures that express views supported by the government of the town of Brookline, whatever that means.
So I don't know if y'all received the same email I did, but I received a very transphobic, homophobic, racist email from somebody in this town. And their argument was that we shouldn't fly the LGBTQ flag. And if we do, we shouldn't fly it with the brown and black stripes. And to me, it is a perfect example of exactly why we still need to fly that flag. So I do think it's important we have some discretion to vote and fly doesn't have to be that flag, but I think that's an important, there clearly is these conversations these are human rights focused, and I feel personally very strongly that we have to have some discretion. So I wanted to say that.
I'd like to be able to say yes,
when we want to say yes, yeah.
The pride flag
Yeah.
should be flown. The question is, what other flags does that open us up to?
Yeah.
And I think that's not that's a problem that's
I think there's no way to do this with zero risk.
Here's what I suggest.
Mhm.
Add to allowed flags in the first paragraph of that section 5. Something like banners or flags advertising or commemorating town-sponsored events or celebrations that are listed on the town calendar. So that gives us an opportunity to identify certain celebrations, events, for example, Gay Pride Month, and to allow flags related to those events. I think that addresses your concern,
Yeah.
as well as prevents, and we're not going to have a celebration of, homophobic, stuff. So that addresses that problem.
Can you read that back again?
Okay.
On it.
Okay. Banners or flags advertising or commemorating town-sponsored events or celebrations that are listed on the town calendar. So that would be allowed flags
So that's
under that first paragraph.
Juneteenth Day or Lunar New Year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's almost like an advertisement,
Yeah.
right? Of, one of those advertising
Yeah.
flags. It says Juneteenth, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think.
It's not,
Sorry. I didn't mean to cut
no,
you
I was just going to say that really what we're talking about is communicating to the public an event that we're going to have in support of something.
Right. I'm just trying to, if there was a way of using the term event in there and excluding an event reflects a cause to some extent.
Yeah.
Juneteenth certainly reflects
Mhm.
a cause. But
Juneteenth's a holiday too, so.
Right. A
right,
federal
yeah,
holiday.
Yeah, it's a point. Yeah, yeah.
I
It's
feel
government,
like
certainly that's government sanctioned, government sponsored by the state.
I like the wording that
Mm.
Bernard has put forward because while I think it's important, we have the bumpers.
Mm.
I think if we get too specific,
Mhm.
we lose something. Everything is a trade-off, right?
Mhm.
So I feel like that wording, at least where I come from, I don't think we need to add anything to make it more prescriptive.
I'd also, Marty Rosenthal, I think, sent us,
You read one of his emails?
I took out my decoder ring and
In defense of Marty, his writing has improved significantly
It's the,
over the last
it's
couple
not
of
the
years.
writing that's the problem. It's the formatting.
Okay, so Marty sent a very thoughtful, email. I think whether it came to us or it was posted, I got a Marty email. And he was encouraging us, I think to, whatever we're doing, to think about it as an interim.
Mhm.
Because eventually we may need to do something with the bylaw to update it, because anything that we do here could be changed by the next select board. We can't
Well, anything we do
commit
is gonna be
a future, right, select board. And some of this we may want to have in the bylaw, specified. So I'm just coming at this knowing that what we do tonight, or if we vote tonight, that this is something that could be changed by another select board, this select board or another select board in the future.
Yep.
Yeah,
Right.
John?
Sure.
I'm trying to figure out exactly what might be limited that we wouldn't want to limit if we add that language. And I'm thinking in particular of a school that Miriam knows very well, and I know very well because our kids went to it, Hayes School,
Mhm.
now the Hayes School, where I heard the principal of that school report the other day that they have, with a lot of pride, had a gay pride flag fly on their flagstaff, just as a matter of course, and that someone vandalized it. And that's sad. If there is a school that has experienced, quite a presence of children who are gay, children who are transgender, and if as an expression of support for them within the student body, the school has adopted a practice of putting a gay pride flag on their flagpole, would that be allowed, or would it have to be in connection with an event? If we tie that kind of an expression to it, it can only be in connection with some kind of event.
So, and that's the answer to that specific question is it would be up to the school department. So the schools set their own policy for flags on property that's under their exclusive care and custody. So it would be up to the schools, and I believe the schools have their own policies in place on this. If you were talking about moving that example over to a town, town setting, then I think under this circumstance, you could say, sure, we fly a pride flag, commemorating Pride Month. Do we fly, but if we fly it year round, are we commemorating that particular celebration? Is someone going to put their hand up and say, hey, that flag's been flying for an awfully long time? Isn't it time to rotate it out? I think, yes, if you then eliminate the catch-all provision at the end of this and just use this, you might be subject to someone putting their hand up and saying, hey, your policy says only commemorating events or celebrations. And I don't see any current celebration on the calendar that reflects the need to fly this flag.
Year round, yeah. And maybe we don't want to fly any flags year round, because once it's flying year round, it becomes sort of the background and we ignore it.
Well, there's that. It becomes and then the history of fighting for equality for groups is that whatever group you manage to whose security and inclusion you manage to improve, there's always another group that is going to need help. And how do you expand that? So what's the next flag that you fly on a year-round basis? I think myself that confining it to an event is actually a pretty good idea.
So if that's the case, is there consensus on the board because to remove this language, the catch-all provision, which is flags not specifically authorized to be flown on town property may not be flown in place there except by resolution of the select board made pursuant to this policy.
And take that out, you said.
Yeah, take out that except by resolution, and then it just becomes may not be flown or placed there. No flag shall be approved or flown if in the opinion of the office of town council. I do think it's just important to maintain that final caveat for town council. It's just a good, it's a good final stopgap review. You don't want to have the city of Boston problem.
Yeah.
Jess, could you be kind to my eyes and maybe?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
One more.
absolutely.
One more. Greg.
You're right.
Thank you.
Is that better?
Perfect. Thank you.
I would like to, Bernard, may.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I just don't want to, I would like to just bring up, so somebody wrote something in the Q&A. I think it's worth reading and discussing. They didn't write anonymous, so I'm going to name them. David Eisenberg said, question relates to the section 3 of outdoor fixture policy that grants the select board the right to decide what signage is appropriate and asks the select board to vote on this privilege for themselves, ! It is puzzling at best and insulting at worst to think that a fair-minded vote could be undertaken by a group, the select board, that might deprive them of the privilege on which they are voting. I'm a little confused by that sentence personally.
What?
So I'm just gonna leave that aside, request a reaction, thoughts from the select board, but I can respond to the rest, which is, I think this is our job as the elected officials. And I think Paul brings up a good point, which is this can be changed by another elected body in a future time, or even by us at a future time if we find this isn't working for us. And I think finally that to answer the part that I understand, and I'm sorry that I don't understand that one sentence, but there are, for lack of a better term, bumpers within section 3 that actually tell us, that kind of outline the things we should and shouldn't be approving or thinking about. So I don't think it's as arbitrary as it comes across in the comment, but I did want to address that because I think it's, it's a valid comment. Hey, Devin, is this a public hearing?
It is not.
Okay. So I just wanted to put that in there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But, my concern is that still with the bumpers, the select board is subject to, influenced by the community, to do things that probably are not very wise. For example, and I don't mean to be controversial or exciting or anything, For example, after the October 7th attack, there's probably a lot of sentiment in the community to put up Israeli flags. And the select board could be influenced to do that. I think that would be a mistake. Just like the same thing with the invasion of Ukraine. A lot of sentiment in the community to support Ukraine by
But
flying
this is not the flag part. This is the general.
or messages too.
Okay.
Messages too. So I'm a little concerned about that. You know, I'd like to believe that the select board is always going to be biased in my favor, right? But I know from experience that that's not the case.
And I think the reality of the situation is, right, the only thing that really binds you that you don't have control to overturn is a law from somewhere else, right? Either a warrant article changing the sign by law in some way or a superseding state or federal requirement. But I do think one of the good things, I think, you know, the question that the commenter raised, Miriam, towards the end is this idea is kind of part of like incredulity at the idea that, oh, you're voting to restrict your own authority, but like, you could vote to unrestricted at any time. That's kind of worthless. I don't think it's worthless because you are putting out in public what your views and your standards are. And if that wants to change, you have to go back to the public, and then the public will offer
And
their opinion to you,
justify it.
on why even if you have the authority, the public will have the opportunity to say to you in public comment and in emails, hey, listen, you know,
Like the billboards.
you know, don't do this, or, you know, think of it a different way. So it opens a dialogue with the community and that's the check on, you know, who's to say that tomorrow you're not going to change this. And the fact is that if they want to change it, you have to do it in open session, and people have to be able to come and talk to you about it.
And we're accountable. We're held accountable.
It's not, it's not true that we have the authority now. We're exercising that authority now, but we've had it in the past. There's nothing that removes that authority. We're saying that this is how we're going to use that authority.
And we're putting that authority in writing. which is
And we're
important.
doing a better
That's,
job
that's what
putting
we
it
don't
right.
have. Like, we don't have it.
Or transparency.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's good guidance for the next select board just the same, to say, well, why did they do this? And did they have were they perhaps more sufficiently intelligent to have the right answer here?
Okay, so we've, in my opinion, fixed the flags piece.
Yeah.
Well, what about the in general, section 3?
That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still uncomfortable with the idea that, you know, the select board will state views or support views that we say are supported by the government of the town of Brookline, implicitly supported by the residents. I mean, that is really opening us up to a lot of problems. John?
I think we're much too concerned here about the possibility that there might be an occasion on which there's widespread feeling in the community and a desire in the community, not universal, but widespread, that somebody needs to say, something about equal rights, because the question is being raised, does our government even stand for equal rights? And so we want to put up a message on the lawn that says equal rights for all, Brookline, that's what Brookline is all about. Or Brookline welcomes all.
Be kind.
Be kind.
Be kind.
Yeah. We need love more than ever. Okay. And if we reached a point where people who put themselves on the line to be elected by the public are fearful that the public doesn't want them to ever try to say something representative of what the public thinks and feels, then, we're in kind of a sad way.
I agree with John.
And they can vote us out of office if we said something that got them really ticked off, like be kind to everyone, love your children, read to your children. Those are, messages most people agree on. And every now and then it's nice to express them. So I think we can trust ourselves.
That message.
Sorry, what?
My children will object to that list.
I mean, again, I agree with John. I think, look, you can't live you can't be so risk avoidant that you cut off all of your
Options.
options, right? And I think these are pretty clear indications of things we shouldn't do. And there's room for us to tell people to be nice to each other, for goodness sakes.
Although I've been criticized for being nice, and you know that, Miriam, right?
No, I missed that.
So let's, but,
I wasn't there that week.
so we,
31.
so we did hear,
I think I just lost my eyeballs on the top of my head. Go ahead.
I think let's argue against ourselves for a minute, because I want to make sure we're just not rolling down a hill here. There's been concerns raised that the government's message would go out, that somehow the government has a supported message and it's going to be put out. What's the downside of that? Like, what would be a message that would be an issue?
Advantage to put our foot in it if we try.
Well,
I think, no, but
There's
listen,
five of us. So
and-
five of us.
yeah.
have to put our foot in it.
Right. Well,
Here's an example. It's a real example. After 9/11.
Yeah.
Right. Many governments came out with statements that in retrospect were unwise regarding, I mean, some of it was anti-Muslim, but
yeah, it
a
was
lot of it was
Islamophobic.
just-
Yeah,
it
immediately.
was just warmongering type
Yeah.
thing. And that's what I'm concerned about. That was very popular. I mean, I remember that so well, how even it affected me, right?
Right.
And, it was very easy for people to get caught up in the sort of jingoism at that time. And
So-
that's the type of thing I'm concerned about.
so let me take a different approach. If we struck this, the select board may approve fixtures that express views supported by the government, the town of Brookline. If we took that out, what do we lose? What opportunity do we lose?
Well, for example, the Black Lives Matter sign that was up for a long time.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't be able to put up the Black Lives Matters.
Because it's in response to an event in the news, an event in American affairs that
That could
carry
be
a
a
message.
flag, right? It could be a flag.
Yeah, that's a
Held
good,
the same
yeah.
It's different.
gravitas, frankly. I mean, I don't think we have to do this very often, right? But
I'm just-
we don't have to do it. It just, again, it gives us the opportunity to do
Mhm.
it.
I guess keeping this in, but somehow getting in the concept that the select board has to make a judgment that this is a message that's not going to be controversial, sorry for using that word, or
Oh, well, that's,
cause,
yeah.
or cause pain
Yeah.
and concern in the community.
So is this, Chaz, can this, and it's probably in here somewhere, can this only be done after a public hearing?
No, you can. Oh, you want to.
Meaning,
insert
does
the-
it require a
Yeah,
public
you
hearing?
require a public hearing?
Does it require a public hearing?
Yeah.
Let's add that in.
Okay. I
Because
like
that's, I like that a lot too.
That way something's just not just popping up
It's not just,
and
right, then we get
Yeah.
some other.
Although, there were times, Bernard's comment about after 9/11,
Yeah, the public hearing wouldn't. have
the public hearing would have gone the
Well,
wrong way,
but
perhaps, but
it's better than
okay.
not having a public.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there will always be, hopefully, there will always be some sane voices in a public hearing. So.
Yeah. And if we can figure out some way of just making the point that the select board has to be sensitive to how a message is going to play in the community.
Mhm.
And, the Black Lives Matter banner, which I suggested, is a difficult message to sort of fit into this.
It is,
theme.
yeah, yeah.
Because it's very appropriate at that time.
Right.
And maybe that's really the answer. It was appropriate at that time, but we're going to take it down once this policy is implemented. But, it just shows. the fact-
Okay, so there's one other, well, I was going to say that putting in a sort of an automatic a sunset,
There is.
60
the
days.
60 days is in there at the bottom, all the way to the bottom. Okay,
Last clause, creation,
here we go. Yeah, 60. All right.
7.
So this,
Yeah.
this feels a little bit better to me with the public hearing and
Not me.
You-
You don't
No,
like a
John,
public hearing?
it's John.
You don't like
No.
public hearing?
Public hearings can be
How is it that
painful.
the library has figured out how to do occasional messages on their lawn without having to have a public hearing every time, they want to say, it's book month, this is crazy.
Well, that's a good point.
Select boards they are the townwide elected executive office. And it's their job to know what is an appropriate message to put on the lawn. And we're not perfect and we might make a mistake at some point in the future. But let's say there was a tragedy, okay? And we wanted to put on the lawn forever in our hearts and the names of the victims of the tragedy. Would we have to have a hearing to do that? That would cheapen that message
It's a legitimate point. He's
terribly, I think.
Okay.
Well, look,
You can argue both ways, and,
Yeah.
and I think the point is we're conscious of the fact that there are some people in the community who would like us not to have discretion, and we're struggling with the fact that not having discretion is a problem.
And there's always public comment,
Yeah.
Right,
we've heard
that's
public
right.
comment on
Yeah.
certain types
Right.
of things we've been
We
doing.
didn't have another public hearing tonight, but
Right.
I heard what I missed, so I
Yep.
think those.
Yeah, those comments were very helpful.
very Important.
I think based on what John just said, I think he makes a really valid point.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
not have
Okay.
public hearing.
Yeah,
Yep.
I agree.
That's,
Well, let me
It's
just
not-
be the contrarian here.
oh, gee.
The library.
Another-
I thought that was John's role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to be done by 8 o'clock.
I'm just throwing this out. I mean, we represent the town in a way the library doesn't. So maybe we have some more greater responsibility to make sure that what we do is consistent with town.
Well, yeah, not only that, but we're likely to comment on things that are outside the library's, the library's stuff relates to
Books, right?
to learning, to that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Libraries have become places of controversy. Let's not forget.
Oh,
that
yeah.
either.
Oh, they
Lot of
sure
them.
have, yeah.
And just always remember that you might face reelection and happen to be approved by the voters for every decision you make, and hopefully you'll make the right decision.
Oh, well, if we have to be approved by every decision we make, nobody would ever be reelected.
Yeah.
No, some decisions will matter more than.
So
others.
wait, what do people think about the idea of taking the public hearing idea? Or
I think
Okay.
John has convinced me that
Yeah.
a public has plenty of opportunity
Okay.
to provide input without a public hearing.
If they don't like what we've done, they're going to come to public
Yeah, I think
comment,
that's right.
Okay,
and they'll stay at the beginning and they'll stay till the end.
okay, what else did we put in this section 3?
There's just a caveat, making clear that, for example, if someone comes to you and says, hey, I've got an idea, for a sign, for example, it says, love your neighbors. You could say, that's great. We're going to adopt that. We're the select board and we're going to adopt that. That doesn't mean that there is a policy in place that anyone who suggests a sign to you gets a sign.
Right.
You are the arbiters of that decision, and wherever an
Right, the last
idea
line.
comes from doesn't mean that it's open season and that everyone who has an idea gets a sign.
Sole prerogative of town government, right?
Can we expand number 5 to talk about messages which I'm not sure what the word is, but harmful to the town?
No, that anything that's harmful to the town is presumably, it's redundant to what? It's already there.
And devices, right? Okay, what do people want to do?
Can we scroll down? Are we still working on this section or is there more?
Up to you. You tell me.
Did we cross out something? You took out something, right?
I had added in language about public hearing and tried to clarify it, then I took it out. so
Okay,
that's
yeah,
gone.
yeah, we took out public hearing, but, so let's keep rolling. The answer is let's keep rolling, right?
Right. So we talked about this last time. I just want
Why
to make
the
sure everyone's
WPA?
okay about informational fixtures. This is an area where it doesn't require select board approval, but it's written or graphic fixtures related to health, safety, general welfare, opening and closing information, and school or town events or ceremonies on town property.
Yeah.
This is, so we can put up the vaccine drive signs and so
Yeah,
forth.
okay.
That's basically the aim there. I also want to make sure that the schools can use town property where appropriate, or shared property where appropriate to do the same thing, bake sales, so forth. So that's that language. We talked about flags. We've made those edits. We've removed the catch-all, but we've included this information about advertising or commemorating events or celebrations that are listed on the town calendar. designation of forums. We got a couple of questions from folks being like, why do we need this, specific designation of forums? Town council has suggested, and I do think it's right, that we want to be very clear to the community and to, for legal purposes, to say, we understand the legal definitions of all these things, and we want to be very, very precise about where we put everything and clear on things that are, so-called designated public forums or limited public forums that outside, we don't have those places. So the traditional public forums language, we want to be clear that the use of traditional public forums for temporary activities like a rally or a protest doesn't authorize people to put up posters on town property during a protest. That's not allowed. You can carry a sign. You were authorized. That's classic protected expressive speech. Carry a sign during a protest. Just don't tape it to a town property. Again, there's no designated public forums. There's no Hyde Park corner in town. There's no opportunity for people to, have that space. There are currently no limited public forums. You discussed and recommended we eliminate. So we have eliminated the so-called bulletin board provision. That's out.
I think that's important. Thank you.
Yeah.
Non-public forums, and this is just the catch-all provision, right? Anything that we haven't specifically talked about is a non-public forum. So school grounds, police and fire stations, polling stations, trees and shrubbery in public parks. Please don't put anything on our trees. Utility poles, golf courses. A resident recommended we add, because they were sick of seeing people put things up there, public rotaries, traffic islands, and tree lawns. So I added that. And again, any area near a particular residence where focused residence picketing occurs. Again, we want to be cognizant of people's rights. That bylaw was passed in order to codify and make clear what people's rights are to picket. But again, you may not use that as an opportunity to put up fixtures. And the last part is about duration. Unless it's otherwise stated, nothing stays in place for longer than 60 days. I will say, what I'll remind that we talked about last time is that if you adopt this, that does mean that I will then ask the Department of Public Buildings to take down the Black Lives Matter sign that's currently out, because it's been up for longer than 60 days. So I just want to be clear that that is a consequence of this.
Jess, I think you've done a great job with this.
Yeah, thank you.
Staff and
Not an easy
town
thing to navigate.
councils, really well done.
There was one other thing. I'm sorry I didn't bring it up till now, but could 60 days be 30 days? 60 days.
Yeah, 60 days is a long time.
Is a long time.
I agree with that.
We can always extend it, right? If
Yes.
it's 30 days is
30
default, and then
days
you can make it,
the option to extend.
well, it's
already
built in there.
Right, yeah, and unless, well, it says unless otherwise stated. So if
Oh,
you make a
otherwise
specific
stated. I see.
authorization,
Okay.
you say, we're gonna fly this for 100 days. We're gonna fly this till the end of the calendar year. We're gonna put this up till,
Okay.
yeah.
Then
We can
30 days
also
is fine.
say we'll fly for 10 days.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Right, okay.
But I think 30 days should be in there so that that's sort of the standard.
Yep.
Yeah. The other, going back to this dead horse I'm trying to beat.
It's dead, Bernard.
Going back to,
Be careful with your metaphor.
going back to which sign, Buster?
The dead
Pardon
horse.
me?
Which dead horse?
Which dead?
Which dead?
Oh, item 5 in section 3.
Yeah,
okay.
he's- section-
So I think that what I'd like to see if we can get in implicitly or explicitly, something about divisive messages. And maybe that's covered by saying that it's not inconsistent with the adopted vision and mission statements of the town. Now, there's no mission statement that says we will not be divisive. But there's an implicit message that in our mission statements and our vision statements that we represent the entire town, all the residents of Brookline, and any messages have to be consistent with that view. So I guess I'm trying to argue to myself that
Mhm.
this is sufficient.
I think if you get in, oh, John has his hand up.
Oh, John?
I'm imagine the scenario of one of us arguing at a meeting, I want to send a divisive message. And like, come on, that's not what that's not who we are.
Well, but
That's not the-
divisive,
that's
You
not the
know,
point.
like,
divisive is a judgment.
Yeah.
It's also,
Yeah,
it- it's you allowing judgment. One person might think something's divisive and the other person might think it's not.
right.
Someone may think divisiveness is good.
No,
right,
but
yeah.
I'm making the
In this
point,
one.
I'm making the point that we shouldn't put line, you can approve messages, but not if they're divisive. Then you're just, you're asking for an argument
Yeah.
over what's divisive and what's not.
Right.
I'm gonna say it again, Bernard. I think it's fine how it's written.
Yeah.
And you have to have 3 board members to agree to whatever. I mean, it's not like you're gonna. get one person.
I can discuss this and try to persuade you, right? But I will not do that if
Well, you haven't
think-
figured out what you're trying to persuade us with. That's the problem.
I think what we-
understand your point and I get it.
What we
I
need,
just don't, I just don't.
Okay, so we have an agreement on the board that
All right,
stay
good.
like.
All right, so now let's just bring the horse to a taxidermist. We're done with that.
Done.
The dead horse, Paul, the dead horse.
Okay, do we have an agreement on the policy as amended through our discussions?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, just speaking for myself, obviously.
Yeah.
Just one little tiny note to Chaz.
Sure.
mostly.
Yes.
I'm on the Brookline Masstown website and I can't find our vision or mission statement.
We're going to talk about that on the 14th.
All right,
Your
then.
vision statement, which you drafted in draft form, we're going to finalize and then we'll put it out there. That's a good start.
Could we
And-
create a banner for that and put it on the?
Good. Not for longer than 60 days then, or 30 days now.
30.
Uh,
That was funny.
And we do have a mission statement in the diversity commission's bylaw, so.
But I'm saying it should be
Yeah, I get it.
more easily accessible on the website.
Yeah.
More prominently placed.
Okay, do we need to go over this again?
We just. vote?
I think you're ready. I
Okay.
have this red line.
I move approval of the sign policy as amended through our discussion and as put in writing by Chaz in his computer.
How about that stand in a court of law?
Okay, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac,
Aye.
Miriam Ashkenazi,
Aye.
Mike Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
And you'll send that to us and
Yes.
post it on, what we can do, post it on the town website?
Yep. It will be up with your other policies and practices and we will make sure it is circulated.
Okay.
Do you mind if I say something to the
Sure.
folks who are here tonight? We heard several very good presentations at the start of this meeting. And I was thinking as we were hearing them, I fear the folks who are speaking misunderstand what we're trying to do tonight. I hope what just happened and that you witnessed makes clear what we're trying to do tonight. But just in case it doesn't, there has never been any intent to create a policy that would allow for us to, at our discretion, leave hateful messages anywhere in town from anybody. It's actually the opposite. We came to this decision tonight as a consequence of messages that were left on town properties in the absence of a policy. And then what do? If you take them down, you're accused of being anti that message. If you leave them up, you're accused of you allowed a message that other people find offensive. So this has all been an exercise in trying to craft a policy that makes sure that individuals in the community can't use town properties at their own discretion to spread hateful messages. And therefore, individuals can't use town property to spread any message. That's what we're setting up tonight. Only the select board, who are the elected officials of the town, can decide to use town properties for the furtherance of a message. And I hope that this board and all future boards will have the wisdom never to use that authority to spread a hateful message. But other than the select board, we have foreclosed the possibility of other people using town properties for spreading of messages. And we don't do it because, out of any desire to pick and choose, which parts of the community we like and which parts of the community we're less caring of. No, it's to make sure nobody thinks that the select board is showing favoritism towards any group, nor should we ever show favoritism to any group. So I do thank you for those comments. I took them very much to heart. I think we all did. But I hope what we did now convinces you that what you feared we were trying to do is not what we were trying to do.
I'd just like to say that what you saw shows the difficulty of coming to decisions on something as complex as a policy regarding signs. And also, it really predates the events of October, and we've been talking about this for quite a while. And we've finally got to the point where we have a written policy that hopefully will be useful and helpful in town. So, okay, any?
You have public comments.
Some who wanted to speak haven't yet.
Yeah,
spoken.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
sorry.
It's right in my computer.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so as Devin mentioned at the beginning, we have 15 minutes set aside at the beginning for public comment. And after our meeting, after the business of our meeting is over, we're willing to sit and listen to public comment by people who have not had an opportunity at the beginning to make their comments. So we'll start off now. I have just one person who's signed up, but if other people in the audience would like to make a comment, I see that one person in the back raised their hand. We'll take those comments also. So.
The first person signed up for public comment is Sana Hafiz. Can join us at the presentation station. Introduce yourself and your 3 minutes will begin.
Hello, my name is Sana Hafiz, Brookline resident, precinct 4. We're all familiar with each other at this point. I'm pretty disappointed. I see everyone standing here, or sitting here rather, and the little smiles and the waving. What was done here today did not reaffirm or support or help our community in any way whatsoever. And I think that it's important to note that, elections are coming up. And of course, everyone here is trying to get reelection, or well, at least most of you are. And there's 2 spots open. And this is not going to be used as a political pawn to say that you have the support of the Muslim community, the Desi community, the whatever it is. What would help get support is measurable change in action. That's not what I've seen here tonight. I saw the way you mentioned the invasion in Ukraine versus October 7th. It's the invasion of Ukraine versus the settler colonialism, the genocide, the mass murdering of children that's been happening for 75 years. So that is a measurable difference in how you address public policy. That's a measurable difference in how you talk about 2 different communities that are going through something similar, maybe not the same. I think also it's important to note that there's a lot more people coming to these things than you've seen before, and that's not going to fizzle out. There's a lot of communities that have felt this way in Brookline. There's a lot more that are feeling that way. We're many and we're coming, and some of us are already here. So if you would like to have a harmonious Brookline, the kind that everyone that perhaps was shielded by a little bit more privilege got to grow up in, that's going to require change. That's going to be difficult. It's going to be unfamiliar. But equality and equity feels like oppression when you're used to privilege. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind here. And really, I just wanted to come up and speak. I wasn't going to after hearing everything that was said, but seeing that this is kind of being used as a win or a pacifying of the community, I just want to put on record that that's definitely not the case. That's not what's felt, and that we'll act accordingly. Thank you.
The next person signed up for public comment is David Eisenberg. You can join us at the presentation station. Introduce yourself and your 3 minutes will begin.
Thank you very much. My name is David Eisenberg. I don't have any written. Oh, I'm sorry. My name is David Eisenberg. I didn't have any prepared remarks, but I spoke a few weeks ago here suggesting that only the flags of the United States, Massachusetts, and Brookline be allowed. And you've come pretty close to what I've suggested, and I want to thank you very much. I think that's a wise decision. On the other hand, you've appropriated for yourself, or kept for yourself, the authority that you currently have, which is to decide about other things. And I think it's a little funny, and I'll explain to to Miriam Ashkenazi, who couldn't understand my statement. Basically, if someone were to ask me, would you like to have the authority to do something? I'd like your vote on what you can do. I'd say, of course, I'll vote for myself to do it. And I think when the town sees that you voted for yourself the right to do something, they'll say, well, of course they would. Now, I think your decisions generally about this matter are pretty much on target, except you make yourselves look a little foolish by appropriating for yourself power and voting that you've got. It's sort of like, well, I won't give you all, course, I think you understand my point. So I will say this, that I think you should not have that authority, not because you're not great gentleman and lady, but because the next group may not be, as you have noted. I think you should make it uniform so you can eliminate any chance of someone saying, that sign is offensive or that sign's not appropriate. And if you make it so that only certain flags, no signage, you've just pulled the rug out from any possibility of being put in a difficult situation. That's the essential part of what I want to emphasize, but I realize you voted differently, and I hope things will work out. I will add one more comment. I've been listening to the comments made here about occupation and international stuff. I think that's pretty much not the business of the select board to worry about Ukraine and Israel and Gaza. But I do want to say one thing, that I've heard the comment, 75 years of occupation. I'll remind you that Israel has been a state since 1948, about 75 years. The first 19 years were under the control of Egypt.
You have 30 seconds.
The past 15 years, or since 2005, there was no occupation. Israel pulled out of Gaza. So there's only a central 30, 40 years. During that time, the fourth greatest improvement in economies was in Gaza in the 1970s, which people forget. So that this so-called occupation didn't exist. I'm sorry to bring this up after saying it doesn't belong here. I'm just responding to all this stuff that was said before. Thank you very much, gentlemen and lady, for your
The next
indulgence.
person signed up for public comment is Alec Leibovitz. You've been promoted to a panelist. You can unmute and your 3 minutes will begin.
Good evening. Thank you, Devin. Alec Leibovitz, town meeting member, precinct 8. I just wanted to commend the members of the board for, I think, a very productive and thorough and reasonable discussion, and ultimately the adoption of, I think, a very nuanced and fine-tuned policy. I particularly appreciated the comments John made at the end about having sensitivity and listening to members of the community, specifically Muslim members of the community, who have expressed, I think, very valid concerns and a very valid sense of alienation in some cases. I did want to make one suggestion to the board, which is I do think it would be unfortunate that a result of the adoption of this policy would be the taking down of the Black Lives Matter banner. I think, you know, that's a very prominent banner in town. I think it represents the best aspirations of our town and some of our important community values, but I don't know that the situation has changed to merit taking down an important statement like that. And I worry about the unintended impact on residents who may not have been following or privy to this debate. So given that you have afforded yourselves the authority to, upon issuance of a sign on town property, set a duration of longer than 30 days, I would ask that you consider keeping that banner up, if not for an indeterminate amount of time, at least for long enough so that residents might be alerted to the policy change and not inadvertently impacted. But thank you again for your hard work on this. It's much appreciated.
At this time, we have approximately 12 members in person and 9 joining us virtually.
Okay, Miriam wanted to say something. So
Yeah,
I'd like
I
to
just,
give an
to
opportunity.
Mr. Eisenberg's comment.
Without going.
No. I'm 3 graduate degrees. I got this one.
I have 1.
Yeah. In fact, we have been elected to make this decision. So I do think we need to make this decision. I do think these things fall on us. And I think that the next select board can reverse these decisions just as the one after that. So I understand your point. I just don't agree with it. We are elected officials. This is our job. We have to make policy. You're welcome to disagree with it 100%. And then not vote for me or whoever next time we come up for reelection. That's perfectly acceptable. That's how the system works. But we've been put in this position to make these decisions.
Okay.
I do want to let the board know that earlier in public comment, Ala Al-Damati had 1.5 minutes and not the normal 3 minutes. So if she wants to conclude, she'll have 1.5 minutes to do that now.
Okay. And tell me your name.
Allah.
slowly so I can hear.
Well, in Arabic, I pronounce it ala. I doubt any of you will be able to pronounce it. So any shot at whatever you want to say works for me.
I want to get close.
You can say Allah,
Alon.
just with an A in the end, no N.
Oh, Allah.
Yeah. ALAA. Thank you. I appreciate that. Honestly, just first and foremost, we appreciate you all hearing us. I mean, at least I speak for myself. I appreciate you hearing public comments, hearing our emails, and scratching the public forum piece specifically based on our feedback. I do think that specific piece reassures our community that certain signs, that are at the moment deemed illegal to be posted anywhere, just like will protect divisiveness and, just create a more inclusive community. So we appreciate that. And I personally appreciate it a lot. I am a little bit like just that debate in item 5, and I don't know how I feel about it. I do think I need to take the time to think about it. I mentioned the word divisive. I know it's based on opinion, and I get that, but I also just feel like, I guess in the future, you never know what's going to happen. You never know how the board is influenced. I'll say that everything that's happened so far has organized the Muslim community. As you guys can see, we weren't here before. We are here now. I agree with Sana. We'll continue to come. We'll continue to appear.
You have 30 seconds.
I also feel like it's tricky with minority communities in general. So I agree with Bernard on that point, and I just urge you to keep that in mind. As you all said, you can go back to that policy. So just keep that in mind as you move forward. And as, world events change and develop, just please do keep in mind that there are minorities in Brookline and that their opinion matters just as much as anyone else's. Thank you.
And as you organize, please run for town meeting.
Okay, let's
Right.
not have.
I'm just going to keep harping on that one.
Yep. Talk to her afterwards.
That concludes. That concludes public comment at this time.
Okay,
There's a
so,
way we can help.
okay,
Yeah.
so that's the end of public comment, as you said. And that is the end of our meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Yay.
And it is 8:50.